The president is stressing the need to work together on things like funding the government, fighting COVID-19, and supporting Ukraine. But House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy says if they can't work together now, they'll have to get it done with a new Republican majority in the House.
What I explained to all of them is that I can work with anyone who's willing to work to get our spending under control, to work to make America energy independent, to secure our borders. CRs are not where we want to be, but if we cannot get our work done now, the outgoing majority, if they don't want to work with us, we can get this work done in January as well.
ABC's Jay O'Brien joins me live from Capitol Hill for more on this. Jay, the two big concerns right now are avoiding a government shutdown and avoiding a rail strike. How likely does it look that Congress will be able to do either?
Yeah, so both of those are must-pass pieces of legislation by the end of the year, but they have very different tracks, as you know. So let's start with the rail strike. The president has essentially called on Congress to approve that agreement between the rail workers and the rail companies. And if Congress approves that agreement, it forces, in a sense, those rail workers back to work without them having to agree to it and agree to that deal. So there is a vote tomorrow in the House on that. It is very likely to pass in the House. Speaker Pelosi does not bring bills to the floor in the House if they do not have the vote. So there are enough Democrats in the House supporting it. Then it goes on to the Senate, where it needs 60 votes. There's that 60-vote threshold in the Senate. There are some Democrats, Bernie Sanders is the most vocal of them, that have said they will not support that measure unless there are certain provisions added in that the union wants, like paid sick leave. But there are some Republicans who have signaled they might be open to voting for it and giving Democrats the extra 10 votes that they need. Other Republicans, like Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, have said they are not on board to voting for this. So it has a much rockier path in the Senate approving that rail agreement than it does in the House. For the government funding runs out on December 16th. And in that sound you just played, you heard Kevin McCarthy say that a CR is not ideal. That's a continuing resolution. That is essentially the ripcord that House and Senate lawmakers will pull before they hit the ground here. And if they can't get an agreement on an omnibus spending package, they would do a year CR. But both parties, Pelosi, McCarthy, et cetera, said coming out of the White House today that is not ideal. That is not something that they want to do. And you heard Kevin McCarthy say that if that can't happen, that there is a potential that those negotiations start back up again with a Republican-controlled House, which obviously takes power come January. So there is a lot to navigate in these final few weeks of this lame duck Congress.
We heard McCarthy there saying that he can work with anyone who's willing to work on controlling spending, energy independence, border security. What does that mean for the president's goals of getting things done before year's end?
Well, it means that come January, they're only going to be in agreement on a very few number of items. And it's worth even taking a step back further and seeing the relationship between Kevin McCarthy and President Biden. These are two people that did not have much of a working relationship prior to McCarthy becoming poised to be the next Republican Speaker of the House, although he has a rocky road of his own to navigate getting votes in his Republican conference. But unlike Mitch McConnell, who Joe Biden served with in the Senate for years, these two do not have much of a personal relationship. And so the question becomes, what can they work on? And are there even items that come out of a Democratic-controlled Senate or of, obviously, a Democratic-controlled White House that would be in agreement with a Republican-controlled House, particularly given the idea that this Republican-controlled House is going to be mounting investigation after investigation into this administration and even into the president's family.
Now, McCarthy also weighed in on former President Trump hosting Ye, a.k.a. Kanye West, and white nationalist Nick Fuentes at Mar-a-Lago. He's condemning Fuentes. He's saying nobody should be associated with either one of these two, but he's still seemingly defending Trump.
Yeah, and so here's what he said, the direct quote: "I don't think anybody should be should be spending time with Nick Fuentes." And he went as far as to say that Nick Fuentes does not have a place in the modern Republican Party. He said it right there to those cameras that you're seeing him step out in front in that earlier footage. But then he goes on to say what you heard former President Trump say, which he did not know, Trump claims, who Nick Fuentes was when he came with Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, to Mar-a-Lago for dinner. He knew who Kanye West was, but he didn't know who his guests were. So you heard McCarthy parrot that line. But he did say what you've been hearing from Republicans across Capitol Hill today, which is there are few Republicans on the Hill. We haven't heard from any that are standing up for Nick Fuentes here, although he does have ties to some further right members of the House GOP conference, particularly Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Now, Speaker Pelosi, meanwhile, expressed excitement about several things the president mentioned, but also about the marriage equality bill. Is there enough support to pass it at this point?
So it has a vote in the Senate this afternoon. It passed its biggest hurdle in the Senate before Thanksgiving. They had 12 Republicans sign on to essentially break a filibuster and call that up to a vote. It's got its final vote this afternoon. It's very likely to pass the Senate. It's expected to pass. Then it has to go back to the House because there were changes made in the Senate to make it more passable in the Senate. Once it goes back to the House, it's expected to pass there, and then it goes on to the president's desk. The only item of note there is that there's a lot going on the Hill, as we mentioned, and Democrats really are under pressure to pass that in addition to all of those other items I mentioned before the new year.
Now, the House committee investigating the January 6th is also coming up on a deadline. What happens when Republicans take control in January?
Well, that committee's work is almost certain to end come a new House Republican conference. So what they have to do now is, in essence, finish their report before the new year. There is sourcing information that the committee will likely get that report out sometime in December. However, when that report comes out, what it looks like, that's an open question. And we also know that the committee is still conducting its investigation, right? They just interviewed today, according to sources, Tony Ornato, who is the former Trump White House Deputy Chief of Staff, now a high-ranking Secret Service agent. He is the one that Cassidy Hutchinson said told him the story of Donald Trump clashing with his Secret Service agent in the SUV on January 6th. So they interviewed him today. So that investigation is still ongoing, but they are obviously under that pressure to finish that report before the committee's work would almost certainly stop in a new Republican-controlled House.
All right, they sure are. Jay O'Brien, thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.